Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone.
Chased down by Beal in the corner for three, gets fouled and hits.
Welcome to DC.
Walker tied him out.
You know where you're at, the USA cap. You're taking it slightly, I'm taking it slightly. Now how you gon' act on you gon' be right back. When we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC.
What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nazi with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. And I'm here with your must-see DMV recap to preseason game number 1 for the Washington Commanders, who just faced the Carolina Panthers and unfortunately fell 23-21 at FedEx Fieldland over Maryland. There's a lot to get to with this recap, but I'll just go through my notes for the first half and the second half of the game. So first and foremost, we started off with a 3-and-out on the offense's first possession. Not great. Something that I feel like I've gotten used to a lot over the last 4 years, especially with how anemic our offense has been. And the Panthers also moved right down the field on their first drive, so not a great immediate start for the Washington Commanders. But one thing that I immediately noticed from the broadcast was Doc Walker. I said this on Twitter, and I'll say it here. I 1,000% loved his honesty throughout the broadcast. You know, a lot of times when it comes to these Commanders analysts or these Commanders broadcasters, a lot of times it's, in my opinion, it's just full-on team propaganda. Like, they support the team. The team could do no wrong. And while I kind of get that, it is their own broadcast. It felt like a breath of fresh air just hearing Doc Walker talk about and criticize the team when it needed to be criticized because of lackluster play on offense or the defense wasn't really showing up. So I definitely appreciate Doc Walker. He should definitely be a mainstay on the broadcast from here on out. I know he was on the radio team, and I don't know why they kicked him off the radio team, but gotta love Doc Walker. I got to meet him in person a couple years ago. So great overall dude, great broadcaster, great color commentator, I should say. So I loved him on the broadcast today. But okay, and then Antonio Gibson. Didn't want to have to get to this discussion with you all, but Antonio Gibson, yet another fumble. Last year, he led all non-QBs with, I believe, 6 fumbles last year, and a lot of those fumbles were on our side of the field, so true backbreakers for an NFL offense. He fumbled again today in his first preseason game, and it's really only a couple snaps in. And as I said earlier in the offseason, right after the draft, and as I'll say now, Brian Robinson was one of my favorite picks, if not my favorite pick from the entire Washington Commanders 2022 draft class. And he showed it today. He was great in between the tackles. You could tell who's been playing running back the longest between him and Antonio Gibson. And I think that's the biggest indictment on Antonio Gibson's potential of being a starting RB1 here in DC for the long haul, because I don't think it's happening. I think this is Brian Robinson's team. This is Brian Robinson's season. And whether Gibson or anybody else likes it or not, I think Robinson's going to shoulder the workload as the running back. And we saw even what he did as a pass catcher. I mentioned this on Twitter. Brian Robinson had 300 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns last season on Bama. And while some of you might think, oh, that's not that much, Nazi, why are you hyping that up? That was on a stacked Bama offense, right, with playmakers all over the field. And Robinson made his mark as a pass catcher. We all know what he can do as a pass blocker as well. He's pretty good in that area. And he's a very good back, bro. Like, everybody just thinks of him as the thumper, the guy that will get you the dirty work, maybe a couple goal line carries, right, and stuff. But he's more than that. He's a complete running back in my eyes, and he showed that out there on the field. And I'm excited to see his future because I think, again, he's going to be our starting running back 1 for the long haul. Some other guys that I wanted to mention. So Amani Rodgers, Curtis Hodges, we're getting a lot of reps today. I think even Coach Rivera talked about in his post-game presser that they pretty much played the whole game with Cole Turner and John Bates and, of course, Logan Thomas being out. So it was great to see them out there. I know Carson Wentz targeted Amani Rodgers a bunch in the first half, especially that first couple of drives that Wentz was out there on the field. And, yeah, so a good game, a good quality game from those 2 tight ends, 2 young tight ends. And another point I wanted to mention, Derek Forrest was actually playing pretty well. Had a nice stop on the first defensive drive in the second quarter. And yeah, I liked what we saw overall out of the safeties. Bob McCain, Cam Curl, Derek Forrest, even Percy Butler towards the second half. I might mention that what he did a little bit later, but I liked the safeties. The cornerbacks, not so much. Danny Johnson was getting cut up all over the field and was a big contributor to why P.J. Walker, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield all did some good things against this Commanders defense, especially P.J. Walker. Oh my gosh, he was just going up and down the field, driving Carolina to points. There was a point in time when Carolina was up 20-6, and a large part of that was because P.J. Walker was having his day against the Commanders defense. So, yeah, that's a little worrisome in terms of the cornerback depth on this team. But I liked what we saw of the safeties. And but back to the offense, Terry McLaurin had a nice running catch, but didn't do too much today. Makes sense. I mean, he is our starting wide receiver when he's a superstar in this league. We paid him as such this offseason, so I didn't really expect him out of game one. It doesn't really matter. You can totally forget what I just said about Terry McLaurin, but I did want to mention Carson Wentz. He went 10 for 13, 74 yards, 89.9 passer rating. Looked pretty crisp, had some errant throws, but played a pretty well first quarter plus. He actually played a little bit more than a first quarter just because the Panthers dominated the ball in that first quarter. So Carson Wentz, the coaching staff wanted him to get a couple series in, and he did some good things. He did get some good things, which is rare for quarterbacks, if you guys remember, in the preseason, because over the last couple years, our starting quarterbacks especially, have been terrible in the preseason. So to see Carson Wentz start off rolling was pretty nice to see, and hopefully he continues that, because no matter what you guys say about my opinion on Wentz, and no matter what my opinion is, I want him to do really well for us, because if he does really well, that means the team does really well. So usually. But another point that I wanted to mention, De'Ami Brown got shellacked on a play. He got absolutely crushed on the play, but it was nice to see him bounce back for a long catch almost right after. And I really like our wide receiver group. Curtis Samuel also had a nice, I believe he caught a pass out of the backfield and ran it upfield, and it was just great to see him out there preseason game one with all the talk about him not even playing game one of the regular season. So that was great to see. And in terms of offense, Taylor Heinicke had an interception. I'm shocked. A bad interception at that. He was not good. He was actually the worst out of the three quarterbacks. The third quarterback I'll mention right after, a little bit later, but I talked about Danny Johnson. Joey Sly missed an extra point at the beginning of the game, so it was 10-6 for a good part of the first half, and that's unfortunate because, I mean, we think Joey Sly is the solution at kicker, so hopefully he doesn't keep this going with missing extra points or missing field goals, because then we'll have another problem on our hands on top of the many problems that we have as is. So, but it's just preseason game number one. Hopefully just knocking off the rust, and he'll be good to go come game two. Jahan Dotson, I didn't even mention him in terms of wide receiver trio. I don't think he caught a pass today. I might be mistaken on that, but I don't think he caught a pass today, so make that what you will, but I think Jahan Dotson will get some more catches, obviously, as the preseason goes along. I think he's going to play in preseason game number 2, and then when the regular season starts, I think he's going to be a weapon for us. My stance on that hasn't changed. It might change in the future, but right now it hasn't changed in terms of him being a stud for us this year. All right, and then with the second half, so I'll say this about the second half. The defense did some good things. Fedarian Mathis had a nice run stop, provided good pressure in pass rush, so it's great to see that out of our second-round pick. Percy Butler also was pretty good in coverage, although he did have some lapses, and I believe he gave up one long catch and run where he could have tackled the receiver like a couple yards before he ultimately did. I think he shoved him out of bounds. He was carried with him, essentially, so not a great play there, but he was pretty good, and I have high hopes for Percy Butler, much like the team. And the Panthers, I mean, they had their way for a good part of the second half. Again, at one point the score was 20-6. 20-6. So that wasn't great. One contributor to that, we did nothing in the return game. Nothing in the return game. Alex Erickson, Dax Milne, Kyrick McGowan, it didn't matter who we trotted out there. Nothing in the return game. And that sucks to see. Maybe Jahan Dotson might get some work there in the future. But, man, we really need someone to provide some spark on special teams. I think last year with DeAndre Carter was the first time in I don't know how many years we actually had a spark on special teams. At least the first half of last year, right? So hopefully we can get things going in that aspect of the game. But I want to get to, well, Dax Milne had a nice catch and run as well. And Alex Erickson did convert on the 2-point conversion at the end of the game to make us have our first lead, I believe, in the entire game, 21-20, right? Also, the Commanders fight song was revealed. They remember the two options between Fight for Our Commanders and Legends on a Mission. Fight for Our Commanders won. That was the one that I wanted. Even though, obviously, if you're out there in the stadium, I think most fans, I'm going to be honest with you, or maybe 50-50, will sing the original Hail to the Redskins. That just is what it is. It was just nice hearing the music, though, in the stadium for the first time in like 2 years. But I want to get to Sam Howell. Sam freaking Howell. So I love the pick for 5th round pick this year, NFL draft. I thought it was a steal. I think many of you all thought it was a steal as well. But the one thing I'll say about Sam Howell is if he continues to play like he did today, 9 for 16, 145 passing yards, 3 rushes, 19 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns, including one 17-yard scramble, I believe, he's going to have the QB2 job for the 2022 season. I know a lot of people think he's going to be the starting QB1 for the future, right? If Carson Wentz doesn't pan out, or once Carson Wentz gets old, Sam Howell will eventually supplant him. But I'm talking about this season. I didn't like what I saw out of Heineke in this preseason game number 1, and we all saw what he did last year. But Sam Howell, I don't know, he just has all the tools that you want out of a good starting quarterback. A very good arm, right? Very smart, very instinctive, good pocket presence, can scramble, sneaky speed, good rushing ability, right? And honestly, I think he provides more as a backup quarterback than Taylor Heineke right now. That might be blasphemous for some of you. And maybe, it's one game in, Nazi cooldown, you got to wait. Again, I'll say it. If he plays like this for the rest of the preseason, Heineke doesn't really show out, then he should be the quarterback too. But, of course, we have some more time on our hands before the start of the regular season. So that opinion is subject to change, who knows, might not change. But I wanted to throw it out there because Sam Howell deserved an applause today for how well he played out there on the field. And yeah, I think that's it. We had the last defensive drive was terrible. Flag after flag after flag, face mask after face mask after face mask. It was just terrible, terrible, terrible. That's what eventually allowed the 45-yard game-winning field goal from Zane Gonzalez for the Carolina Panthers, which eventually put them over the top, right? 23-21 at the very end of the game. So that was unfortunate, but hopefully this team becomes or shows to be more disciplined as preseason goes along, and especially as the regular season games start. But that's it for my recap of Washington Commanders versus Carolina Panthers. Washington Commanders preseason game number 1 of the 2022 preseason. And yeah, I'm excited. The team did some good things out there. I know a lot of people might look at the final score and be like 23-21, we lost. It doesn't really matter. It's the preseason. But the team did really good things. I loved especially what the offense put out there, whether it be Carson Wentz or Sam Howell and Brian Robinson. Antonio Gibson, man, he's just falling more and more down the depth chart. I'm sorry, I gotta say. And this is coming from a guy who said Antonio Gibson will be a Alvin Kamara type back for us, literally in my 2020 draft review, right? And stats-wise, he kind of was last year in the last couple of years, stats-wise, right? But I'm throwing that out there to say I think Brian Robinson is going to be our starting running back 1. I love what Brian Robinson brings to the table, and he just moves. He just chugs his legs along and moves forward, right? He just moves forward, and I feel like you could see the difference between a true RB1 in Brian Robinson versus an Antonio Gibson, who we keep trying to trot out there as a running back when I don't know if he's a between the tackles guy, right? Even Coach Rivera talked about it in his post-game presser about how, when he runs hard, first cut, go, Antonio Gibson's at his best. But when he does his whole shifty ballerina dance-ish, then he struggles. And maybe Gibson, I liked how he bounced back in the second quarter when he was rolling with the 2s on the offense, but you got to do that when you're rolling with the 1s, right? And I think Brian Robinson showed that. So that's it for my recap, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the DMVSportsZone channel where I like to post fire content like this as much as possible. Also, go follow our Twitter page at DMVSportsZone, Instagram page, all lowercase DMVSportsZone, and our TikTok at DMVSportsZone as well. Evan has you with a vlog for preseason game number 1. He went to FedEx Field and watched the game. Was super stoked about some of the things that happened, and we'll have a video for you up on the channel very, very soon. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And practices, there's not going to be no training camp practice tomorrow, but Monday is when practices start up again. So see you on the next one. Peace.